I gave my daughter-in-law the birthday gift she would never forget right after she tried to help herself to my retirement account. Posted to r/true off my chest. I want to be clear about something before I start. I am not a difficult woman. I am not the mother-in-law from a cautionary tale. I do not interfere. I do not drop by unannounced. I do not offer opinions on how my son lives his life unless those opinions are asked for, and even then I try to be measured and careful because I know how much damage a mother-in-law can do with the wrong word at the wrong time. I have watched other women do it. I made a deliberate choice a long time ago to be different. I say this not to put myself on a pedestal, but to give you the context you need to understand how much it took for me to do what I did on my daughter-in-law's birthday last spring. Because by the time that day arrived, I had been patient for a very long time. I had been gracious for a very long time. And what she did with my money was the thing that finally, quietly, cleanly ended all of that. My name is not important. I am 61 years old, widowed 7 years ago, and I live alone in the house where I raised my son, who I will call Elliot. I worked as a hospital administrator for 33 years. I am not wealthy, but I am comfortable. I built that comfort carefully and slowly, the way you do when you are a single mother who cannot afford to make mistakes with money. My retirement account, my modest savings, the paid-off house, those things represent 3 decades of decisions I made with great care. They are mine. They are the proof that I did the work and did not give up and gave my son a stable life, even when stability felt like something I had to manufacture every single morning through sheer force of will. His father died of a heart attack when Elliot was 29 and I was 54. We got through it together, Elliot and I, in the particular way that grief makes you both more fragile and more bonded to the people who understand what you have lost. We were already close. After that, we were something more, which is why what happened hurts in more than one direction. Elliot met Brianna 4 years ago. He was 32. She was 28. She was pretty and lively, and she made him laugh in a way I had not seen from him since before his father died. And for that alone, I was prepared to love her. I want to be fair to her history with me, because it was not always bad. In the beginning, she was warm. She came to my home and complimented my cooking and sat with me after dinner while Elliot did the dishes and asked me about my work and my life before Elliot, and I thought, this is a good one. He has found a good one. They got engaged 18 months after they met. I was happy for them. I gave them my blessing sincerely, without reservation. They got married in a ceremony that was perhaps a little more expensive than I would have chosen, but it was their wedding, and I kept that opinion firmly to myself. The first indication that something was not entirely right came about 6 months into the marriage. Elliot called me on a Tuesday evening, which was unusual. We had a Sunday call tradition that had been in place for years, and a Tuesday call meant something was on his mind. He said he wanted to ask me something, and he hoped I would not take it the wrong way. I said to go ahead. He said that he and Brianna were feeling some financial pressure. They had bought a house. They were trying to furnish it. Her car had needed a significant repair, and he wanted to know if I might be in a position to help them out with a short-term loan. He named a figure. It was not enormous, but it was not small either. He said they would pay me back within a year. I want to be honest. Something in me was slightly uneasy about the request. Not because I could not help. I could, without significant strain, and not because I begrudged my son. I would do almost anything for Elliot. But the way he said it, he and Brianna were feeling some financial pressure. Not we made some decisions that stretched us thin. Not we had some unexpected expenses. But pressure, as if it were a weather condition happening to them rather than a consequence of choices. And the repayment timeline, 12 months, felt slightly optimistic given what I knew of their spending. But I said yes. Because he was my son. I transferred the money that week. They paid back about 2/3 of it over the following 18 months, and then the repayments simply stopped. I waited. I did not call. I did not send a message. I gave it 3 more months and then I mentioned it, as gently as I could, to Elliot on a Sunday call. He said he had not forgotten, and that things were just tight right now. I said of course, no rush. I did not believe my own words even as I said them, but I said them. That money was never repaid. The second request came 14 months after the first. A different figure this time, slightly larger. A business opportunity that Brianna had identified. She worked in a field adjacent to e-commerce, and she had seen what she believed was a gap in the market. She wanted to launch a small brand. She needed startup capital. Elliot presented it to me the way someone presents something they have been coached to present. There was a practiced quality to his language, a rehearsed optimism that I recognized as being borrowed from someone else's enthusiasm. I asked a few questions. What was the business model? What were the startup costs beyond what they were asking me for? Had she done a formal business plan? The questions were not hostile. They were the questions a responsible person asks when they are being asked to invest money they worked 30 years for. Elliot answered them as well as he could, which was not very well, because I do not think he knew the answers himself. He said Brianna had really thought this through. He said she was very passionate about it. Passion, I have learned, is not a business plan. But he was my son, and Brianna was his wife, and I wanted to believe in them. So I said I would contribute a smaller amount than they asked for. I named a figure that was roughly 40% of their request, and explained that it was what I could do comfortably without affecting my own security. Elliot seemed grateful. I transferred the money. The business launched. It had a nice Instagram page. It did not survive its first year. I did not ask for any of that money back. I had given it knowing the risk, and the risk had materialized, and I decided to absorb it rather than damage the relationship over it. That was my choice. I made it consciously. What I did not make consciously, what I did not make at all, was the decision that came next. I need to tell you what happened very carefully because the facts of it are important and I want them to be clear. I have a financial advisor I have worked with for 11 years. His name is Robert, and he is careful and thorough, and I trust him completely. We review my accounts quarterly. My retirement account, my IRA, built over 3 decades of consistent contributions and conservative investments, is the core of my financial security. It is the thing that means I will be okay when I am older. It is not a fund I dip into. It is not something I discuss casually. Robert called me on a Monday morning in February of this year. He said he wanted to flag something and he needed me to call him back at my earliest convenience. His voice had a quality I had not heard from him before, not alarmed, but careful, in the manner of someone who is choosing their words deliberately. I called him back within the hour. He told me that on the previous Friday, he had received a call from a woman identifying herself as me. She had called the main office number, had gone through the standard identity verification process, and here, Robert paused because this next part was the one he found most concerning. She had been able to answer the security questions correctly. Name, date of birth, the last 4 digits of my social security number, the name of my first pet. She had asked to discuss options for an early withdrawal from my IRA. A significant withdrawal. Robert said that the representative who had taken the call had followed protocol and told her that any withdrawal request of that size would need to go through the primary account holder's verified contact information before it could be processed, and had sent a confirmation request to my email address. He asked me if I had received that email. I had not. I had not received it because I had not been expecting it, and I do not always check that particular email account daily in the winter, when I am less busy. I checked it as Robert stayed on the line. The email was there. It had been sent Friday. It was sitting unopened. Robert said the request had not been processed because I had not confirmed it. I sat with that for a moment. The money was still there. Nothing had been taken. But someone had called, using my information, trying to initiate a withdrawal from my retirement account. Someone who knew my date of birth and the last 4 digits of my social security number and the name of my first pet, which was a cat named Biscuit who I have mentioned to almost no one living, but who I mentioned in a conversation with Elliot and Brianna at my kitchen table approximately 8 months earlier, during an evening when we were doing one of those light-hearted family question games. I did not say anything to Robert about my suspicions. I thanked him, changed my security questions, added additional verification requirements to my account, and sat at my kitchen table for a very long time after I hung up. I am a methodical person. I have been a methodical person my whole life, because when you are raising a child on one income, there is very little margin for impulsive decisions. So I did not call Elliot. I did not call Brianna. I did not make any accusation I could not support. Instead, I spent the next 3 weeks being very quiet and very observant and very deliberate. I confirmed, Through a conversation with Elliot that I navigated carefully, that Brianna had been home alone on the Friday in question. He had been traveling for work since Thursday and had returned Sunday. I noted, in a follow-up call with Robert after I had added new security measures, that the verification questions the caller had answered correctly were not questions that anyone could have guessed. The pet name in particular. Biscuit is not a common cat name, and it is not information I have shared digitally or publicly anywhere. I could not prove it was Brianna.
I want to be precise about that.
I cannot prove it in a legal sense. But I am 61 years old, and I have been navigating the world for 61 years, and I know what I know. Brianna's birthday was in April, 6 weeks after the phone call. I have a tradition with Brianna's birthday. I started it in their first year of marriage because I believe in marking occasions, and I wanted her to feel included in the fabric of the family. Every year on her birthday, I give her a card and a gift, something personal, something thoughtful, not extravagant but considered. The first year I gave her a beautiful leather journal because she had mentioned wanting to write more. The second year, a cooking class because she had expressed interest in learning more about a particular cuisine. Last year, a cashmere wrap in a color I knew she loved. She always seemed genuinely pleased. She always thanked me warmly. This year I decided to give her something different. I had consulted, very quietly, with my brother-in-law who is a retired attorney, not asking him to take any action but asking him to help me draft a document. A very specific document. A formal accounting. The document itemized, clearly and completely, every dollar that had moved between my accounts and Elliot and Brianna's household since the beginning of their marriage. The first loan, with the amount repaid and the amount outstanding. The business contribution, noted as a gift given in good faith. And then, at the bottom, in its own section, a description of the account inquiry that had been made on the previous February. Not an accusation, not a statement of proven fact, but a simple, factual record that an inquiry had been made, that it had been initiated using personal information I had shared in a family context, and that had it been successfully processed, it would have resulted in a 6-figure withdrawal from my retirement savings, along with the substantial tax penalties and the irreversible damage to my financial security that would have followed. The document also included, attached as a separate page, a letter. I wrote the letter myself, without my brother-in-law's help. It took me 4 drafts and about a week. It was not angry. It was not cruel. It was simply honest, the most honest thing I have written in a long time. I printed it, put it in an envelope, and wrapped it in the same kind of thoughtful wrapping paper I always use for her gifts. Elliot's family came to my house for Brianna's birthday dinner on a Saturday in April. Her parents were there, who I like well enough. Her mother is a pleasant woman who talks a great deal about gardening. A few friends of theirs came. It was a nice dinner. I cooked, which I do well, and which I find calming when I am managing something difficult internally. I was present. I was warm. I made Brianna feel celebrated in the way I always have, because whatever she had done, this dinner was not the moment, and the people in that room did not need to witness what was coming. After dinner, after cake, when the friends had gone, and it was just family remaining, I brought out the gifts. Her parents gave theirs first. Elliot gave her his jewelry, lovely, he has good taste. And then I brought out my envelope. She opened it with the particular care people use when something is wrapped nicely, not wanting to tear the paper. She saw the document first. I watched her begin to read it. I watched the moment when her expression changed, not dramatically, not in a way the rest of the room caught immediately, but something moved across her face that was unmistakable to me, because I had been watching her face for 4 years and I knew its territory. Elliot, beside her, leaned over to read what she was reading. The room was quiet in the pleasant, post-birthday cake way that rooms get quiet. And then it was quiet in a different way. Brianna's mother said, cheerfully, not having looked up from her phone, "What is it, sweetheart?" Brianna did not answer her mother.
She was looking at me.
Her face had gone to a place I had not seen it go before. Not anger, not guilt, exactly, but something in between, something that is what you feel when you are standing in front of evidence that you know and the person holding it knows, and there is nothing left to perform. I held her gaze. I did not say anything. I did not need to. The document said it. Elliot was very still beside her. He looked at me with an expression that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Not accusation, not defense of his wife, but something like understanding. Like something he had been holding a question about for a while had just been answered in a way he had been quietly dreading. Brianna's mother eventually sensed the silence and looked up from her phone. She looked at her daughter, then at me, then at her husband, and said, "Is everything all right?" I said, "Yes, everything is fine." I said Brianna and I had some things to talk about privately when she had a moment, and that tonight was not the night for it, but I wanted her to have the document so she could read it in her own time. I stood up and began clearing the dessert plates. The conversation with Elliot happened 2 days later. He called me on a Monday evening, which is not a Sunday, which told me the weight of it. He did not defend her. He did not accuse her either. He said he did not know for certain what had happened, and I told him I did not either, not with proof, and that the document reflected what I knew factually and nothing beyond that.
He was quiet for a long time.
And then he said, "Mom, I'm sorry." I told him he did not need to apologize for something he did not do. He said he was apologizing for not seeing it sooner, for not asking harder questions when the money stopped coming back, for not paying more attention to things he may, on some level, have been avoiding looking at. I told him that I loved him and that I was not angry at him and that I needed him to understand that I was not giving that money any more thought and that what I needed from him going forward had nothing to do with finances. What I needed from him was to be my son in the way he had always been my son before any of this started. To call me on Sundays, to come for dinner, to not let her, and I chose this word carefully, to not let her come between us in the way that this kind of thing can if you let it. He said he would not let that happen. I said, "I know. I believe you. Now, let's not talk about this again for a while." He called me the following Sunday. He has called every Sunday since. Brianna and I have not spoken directly about what was in that envelope. She came to my house 3 weeks after the birthday with Elliot for a regular dinner, and she was quieter than usual, but present and not hostile. She helped clear the table without being asked. She complimented the food. Before they left, she stopped in the hallway and said, without looking fully at me, "Thank you for dinner. It was really good." And then she hugged me, quickly, and went outside to wait for Elliot to bring the car around. I do not know what to make of Brianna, entirely. I think she is a person who is not raised with a stable sense of financial security, and that this has made her do things that come from fear rather than malice. That is not an excuse. You do not get to harm people because you are afraid. But it is a context. And I am a person who tries to hold context even when I am also holding justifiable anger. What I know is this: I protected myself. I did it quietly, without making a scene, without destroying anyone in public, without tearing apart my son's marriage in a dining room full of her friends and family. I gave her the truth in an envelope on her birthday, and I let her carry it, and I trusted my son to be the man I raised him to be. He is being that man. That matters more than any dollar figure. Update: posted 5 months after the original post. Hello again. I did not expect to come back here, but a significant number of you reached out through messages asking for an update, and a few of you shared your own stories about family and money and betrayal in ways that moved me more than I expected. So here I am, 5 months later, with a cup of tea and a quieter version of things to report. The marriage, Elliot and Brianna's, is intact. I know some of you were expecting me to report otherwise and perhaps were hoping for it, and I understand that impulse because the story is shaped like one where that should happen. But life is not obligated to resolve itself into clean narrative arcs, and these two are still together, and I believe they will remain so. What has changed is something subtler and more significant than a separation. Elliot called me in the summer, a Tuesday call, which, as I told you in the original post, means something is on his mind, and told me that he and Brianna had started couples counseling. He said it was Brianna's suggestion. He said the counselor was good. He said they were talking about things they had not talked about directly before, and that some of it was hard, but that he felt better going into each conversation than he felt coming out, which is how you know something is actually working. I told him I was glad. I meant it. Brianna called me herself in August. This surprised me enough that I almost did not pick up, and then I thought, she is calling. That takes something. So I picked up. The conversation was not long. She did not confess anything or retract anything or ask me directly about the February phone call. But she said something that I have thought about since. She said that she had not been fair to me and that she knew it, and that she wanted me to know she was working on herself, and that she hoped I would give her the chance to show me something different over time.
I told her I was open to that.
And then, because I am who I am, and I could not leave it entirely alone, I said, Brianna, whatever you need, come to me directly. You are family. I would rather know what you are struggling with than find out later in a way that hurts everyone. She was quiet for a moment. And then she said, okay.
Yes.
Okay. We will see what that means in practice. I am cautiously open. The money. I have made my peace with the loans that were never repaid. I have removed them from the mental ledger where I was keeping them because I found that maintaining that ledger was costing me more than the balance justified. The retirement account is safe and fully secured, and I have added protections that I should have had in place years ago, which is a lesson I am absorbing without self-punishment because there is no productive version of punishing yourself for trusting your family. My brother-in-law, who helped me draft the document and who has been checking on me since all of this came out, took me to dinner last month and told me he was proud of how I had handled things. He said most people either explode or say nothing and that I had found a third way. I thought that was kind of him.
I also thought, well,
I had 33 years of hospital administration. You learn to deliver difficult information calmly. You learn that the way you say a thing shapes how it can be heard. The envelope approach was, in its way, the most professional thing I have ever done with a personal problem. I suppose that is fitting. What I want to say to close this, because I know some of you are living inside versions of the story right now, is something I have said to myself a lot over the last several months. Family is not a blank check. Not emotionally, not financially, not in any of the ways we are sometimes made to feel it should be. Loving someone, loving them sincerely, deeply, in the long and complicated way you love the people who are woven into the fabric of your daily life, does not require you to absorb unlimited harm. You can love people and still hold a line. You can be generous and still keep track. You can forgive without forgetting, and you can give someone a chance to be better without pretending the past did not happen. The birthday gift I gave Brianna was the most honest thing I have given anyone in years. It said, I see you. I see what happened. I am not going to destroy you over it. But I am also not going to pretend it did not happen, and I am not going to let it happen again. She got the message. I believe she understood it. What she does with it is hers now.
I made my son a meal last Sunday.
He ate 2 helpings, which has always been his way of saying thank you since he was 7 years old, and could not quite put words to gratitude. I washed the dishes and he dried them, and we talked about his work and a book he was reading and a trip he and Brianna were thinking about taking in the fall.
It was a Sunday.
It was a good one. That is what I have. Edit. For everyone asking for the exact wording of the document, I will not share it in full, as it contains information that is private to my family. But for those of you in similar situations, my advice is this. Facts, stated plainly, without embellishment or accusation, do more work than any emotional confrontation. Let the numbers speak. They are very good at it. Edit 2. For those asking whether I have completely cut Brianna off financially, yes, I have. There will be no further loans or contributions of any kind. This is not punishment. It is simply the boundary that should have been there from the beginning, and that I am now maintaining without drama or negotiation. Elliot understands. We have not discussed it again. Edit 3. Biscuit was a wonderful cat. He lived to 18, and he deserved better than to have his name used as a password for attempted theft. I have since renamed the security question. He would have been appalled.